And we're joined once again with President and CEO Sam Lee of Northisle Copper and Gold. Welcome and pleasure to have you back again.
Thanks, great to see you again, Brendan.
Absolutely. Well, there's been a lot that's been going on with your company, and we're going to get into all the different news releases and the drilling and everything you've been doing. But I just wanted to start off with getting an overview of your company because you're one of the most promising copper gold porphyries in all of Canada. Yeah. If someone hasn't heard of your story before, just in 30 seconds or less, you mind just giving us a really quick overview of what you've been doing with your company?
Sure, absolutely. So as you say, we're copper gold porphyry in Canada, one of the safest jurisdictions on the planet. In British Columbia, specifically, the province of British Columbia, we have approximately 5 billion pounds of copper equivalent. It's a copper-dominant porphyry, so about 65% copper, about 33% gold by value, as defined by PEA. The PEA also defined a project of about $1.1 billion after-tax net asset value, with an IRR of about 19% after-tax, which is fantastic for a long-dated project, 22-year life of mine project with about approximately 100,000 ounces of gold and 100 million pounds of copper production, recoverable copper production a year for those 22 years. So we've got a fantastic jurisdiction, incredible access to infrastructure, power, water, roads. These things are extremely important in today's world, where they have become the most important commodities. Mm-hmm. And of course, the exploration upside, as we'll get into very quickly, is going to be significant as well.
Yeah, fantastic. I said 30 seconds and you nailed that. That was very precise in 30 seconds and how much you got it. So I appreciate that because there's a lot to talk about and we want to be able to get to that. But just before we start getting to some news releases that just recently came out, I'd like to ask a question that a lot of investors ask themselves. Why should I invest in your company? What are the opportunities that have been arising over the years of just continually de-risking this and the drill results and everything that, again, we're going to get right to?
Absolutely. So I think the answer to that is we try to be relevant at every point of the cycle, right? So depending on where we are in the cycle, if we're at the starting end of the cycle and the middle or the end of a super cycle, which we saw last year, or circa 2001, 2011, we have 3 projects that essentially make us relevant in all parts of that cycle. So the first one, as I described, it's the high tonnage, large, long life project in Hushmu, which has a PEA, $1.1 billion. That is a second half of the cycle project, right? So we seeing, obviously my background, investment banking, over $100 billion of M&A transactions. Most of that happened circa 2006, 2011, which was when the most robust time of the cycle occurred. So I do think that we're embarking on that cycle, but we're not there yet. We still need to get through a lot of these recessionary fears, hyperinflation, global instability. So that's why we focus our attention on Northwest Expo project, which is our number 2 project here. And so in the last year, this is an area that we focus on because of its high grade. So we've seen grades, drilling grades of intercepts of up to about 2.1 grams per ton over 135 meters, which is a fantastic intercept. That's a 270 grams times meter intercept, which in any respect is a discovery, high probability discovery hole. Yeah. And so we're looking to define this project or this area into that high margin, low capital intensity project, predominant with gold, but also with a bit of copper as well, to bridge into the number 1 project, 22-year project. And so we've now been providing that evidence over the last couple of months around metallurgy. We're going to be issuing our maiden resource for this area in the next couple of weeks, certainly before Q1 ends. And we're really looking forward to that coming out because it really does kind of provide 2 of the 3 elements of evidence to move this project forward. We just recently announced the metallurgy for this project, where we actually got about 90% recoveries on the gold and 80% recoveries on the copper. So it recovers out really, really well. It's much, much higher grade, which is why we actually think that this is going to be our high margin, high return proposition that can bridge into the bigger project. And the third proposition is called Pemberton Hills. This is a massive, massive lithocap, 6.5 kilometer by 1.5 kilometer lithocap that's usually not seen in British Columbia. This is defined, we've defined a 14-hole program, exploration discovery program. We've drilled 2 of those 14 holes, and we're coming out with those results over the next couple of weeks and months. So there's a lot to really focus on in this project, lots of levers to pull, lots of ways to be relevant in this part of the cycle and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to focus on as well is just the momentum that you've been getting. It's been a tough market for a lot of junior exploration companies, for producers, for everything on all above. But what you've been able to do is you've really stood out from a lot of your peers, and that's a lot because of the results that you're able to get here. So what are we seeing on this slide?
Yeah, it's a strategy results. And as you said, like we have outperformed not only our peers, but the overall index, the copper junior index and the GDX junior index. And the reason behind that is that we had a strategy that we formed a year and a half ago around this high grade, high return proposition at Northwest Expo, and now we're delivering those results. And it'd be through those results that we've delivered, we've also identified a really, really interesting part of this zone at Northwest Expo that is exceedingly high grade within the porphyry. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but I think that coupled with the fact that we are now fully funded for our 2024 programs, we just raised $6.5 million in December with a lead investor, Franklin Templeton, a significant large institutional investor based out of the US. We're starting to build our institutional base. We already have 4 cornerstone investors led by Dale Corbin, our chairman, mining Hall of Famer, owns approximately 11%. He's best known for Western Silver, selling Western Silver for $1.1 billion to Glamis Gold Corp. We have Michael Gentili, who owns about 9.9%. He's on a personally diluted basis. He's one of our strongest advocates, certainly within the public domain, and is a strategic advisor of ours. And then we have Donald K. Johnson, who is an absolute legend on Bay Street that owns 9.9%. So I think the cornerstone support that we have and the continual ability to fund our programs has really set us apart from our peers.
Yeah, and I appreciate that very detailed answer there. And you mentioned something about your metallurgical results that come out. I'd like to go over that really quickly, but more specifically, what does that really mean for your company? So you recently just put out your preliminary metallurgical results for your Northwest Expo, which we were just talking about. And how does that then lead to accelerating your project development timeline in 2024 as well? Can you go over a little bit of that news release that just came out a few days ago?
Sure. So metallurgical results show that a project can be economic, right? It's not only how much in situ resources you have in the ground, but how much you can extract. And so we've now shown that we can extract approximately 90% on average from gold using a traditional copper concentrate float plus a CAL on the rougher tailors, and 80% on the copper. The other significance, and it also goes to the other question on how we define ourselves relative to our peers, is that this is predominantly gold, like versus the larger project, which is predominantly copper. And I do think that that is a very significant competitive advantage that we have. Very few other projects have this element of gold. I always call copper as being a critical metal, but gold being a critical currency. And the fact that we have this ability to leverage that critical currency that traditionally has traded at premium valuations, and you can utilize for lower as a lower cost of capital source of financing through royalties, through streams, et cetera, that is incredibly important in developing the larger critical metals project that we have. So I think the metallurgy is just one step towards that, to say this is not only exceptionally higher grades, gold grades in the porphyry, but it's also recoverable to the point of 90%, which was historically the highest that we've seen across this project.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. You bring up a really good point as well, because copper is going to be in demand, especially so over the next few years, as we're seeing a deficit really started coming around that corner here. But those are also bigger projects, and it takes a longer time sometimes to really get those going. Whereas the gold project, this is something that quite possibly can be put into production a lot faster, lower capex as well. And we're going to jump right into this project in more detail, because you recently have been announcing several different results from your drilling from last year. Do you mind going into those results and what it's telling you about the Northwest Expo?
Sure. So as we define now our 600-meter strike, so as you can see the strike of this project envelope, we've obviously been seeing grades of upwards of 2 grams per ton gold equivalent, and that's one of the holes that we really are focusing geologically from an exploration perspective. Infill is obviously to define the resource, which will be coming out within the next couple of weeks. But this one hole, 2313, intersected approximately, as I mentioned, 2.1 grams per ton of 135 meters. Within that 135 meter interval, there was a 5 gram per ton gold equivalent interval within the porphyry breccia, which is obviously part of the porphyry. It's come up from somewhere. It obviously hasn't come down. There's a hill, there's a downdropped portion of that deposit, we believe, to the south. And so one of the prerogatives this year is to focus on that extension of that high grade zone. So overall, you can think of our fully financed 2024 program as being about 60% definition to move into quickly economic studies for Northwest Expo, and potentially combining it with Red Dog, and approximately 40% going after this vertical extension to the south, and also another discovery that we made in December for an area called West Goodspeed, which is only 7 kilometers away, where we hit about 135 meters of 0.5% copper equivalent. That's a new discovery. That is a maiden discovery, and that's something that we're going to also chase to see if we can convert that 7-kilometer trend into a 7-kilometer strike, which would then make this entire northern end of the proposition world-class tier 1.
Yeah, it truly sounds like it. And we've taken a lot of time to go over what you have been doing and the results you've been able to do. And we're also hinting a little bit about what's to come. That's the last question for this interview. For an investor who's hearing this, or maybe possibly already invested in your company, what are the things that they should be looking out for and excited about coming down the pipeline from your company?
Sure. So again, this is all evidence driven, right? Like, I mean, we have aspirational goals. We've met our aspirational goals. We've come out with the MET test last week. We're coming out with the journal results, the final resource, maiden resource rather, this quarter. We've initiated our plan for 2024, which is fully funded, which I had mentioned is obviously approximately 60% infill, about 40% exploration step out. And we will initiate drilling in the next month, and we'll probably start to see results from that program in and around end of June, early July. And then from that, we will go into phase 2 and phase 3. During that period of time, we will be studying the economics through scoping studies, and then potentially moving into a PEA on this Northwest Expo zone, which we believe has multiple expansion of margins and significant increase in the IRR. So that's our aspirational goals for that project, and we should be able to get those results in very, very short order.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Sam, I appreciate so much for your time and fitting a lot of information in a very short amount of time. For anybody who's looking for more information really quickly, where can they turn to?
If you go to our website, www.northisle.ca, that's northisle.ca, and feel free to reach out to myself or our CFO, Nicholas Van Dyke.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. A pleasure. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here at PDAC as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.